I think I speak for a majority of the population that that's where we go. The big financial institutions have billions of dollars to guide societal norms. So get yourself out of a societal norm. You got to step outside the box. It all depends on how you find the people that could help you in various scenarios. Just get outside of the box because there's so much stuff out there to do.
Welcome, everyone, to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people that were successful in a previous career and left that career to go down a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we're so pleased to have Flint Jamison with us. Flint, welcome.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Flint. Well, thanks again for being on the Road Less Traveled Show. To start with, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how long you're in that career?
Yeah, I spent 20 years in aerospace as an engineer and a program manager, both commercial on the 787 and a modified aircraft for the Air Force. But per your title, The Road Less Traveled, out of school, I worked actually telerobotic manipulators for the nuclear waste industry. I did that for 2 years. And then, so The Road Less Traveled, I was burnt out on that. They took kids out of school and just worked us and underpaid us. And so I ended up moving to New Zealand for a year and just did whatever I wanted. I had a blast. I bike toured the entirety of New Zealand. I worked on ski lifts in the summertime, just did a whole bunch of fun stuff. Oddly enough, the road less traveled, right? I basically sidestepped my engineering career, did that. And then when I came back to the US a year later, I ended up getting that job at Boeing and working there for 10 years. And it was like the best career move I ever made at that time. Until now, I'm working for myself in real estate.
And then what have you transitioned into as you did real estate? What part of real estate?
What part? Yeah, so I do commercial real estate. I raise capital for apartment building and development properties to bring investors double-digit returns.
Excellent. Do you focus on any geographic area in particular, or is it kind of
no? So I fell into the capital raising side, which serendipitously worked out really well for me because working remote, I don't have to travel a whole lot, and I partner with experienced operators. That way, I can bring my investors and friends and family and myself a diverse portfolio. So I'm all over the place. I'm basically location agnostic as long as the location basically meets the plan, the business plan of the given operation. I mean, there's so many good markets out there. I would hate to just be stuck in Dallas-Fort Worth 100%.
Mm-hmm. Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Flint, think back to your days maybe as the nuclear waste guy or New Zealand or Boeing. Is there a funny story, something from your past that you can share?
So many funny stories. Where do I take this? When I married my wife, so the traveling thing, I got bit by that bug when I went to New Zealand. When we got married, I told her we had to visit all 7 continents before we had kids. So mission accomplished. Our honeymoon was actually, I let her choose, and we ended up climbing Kilimanjaro and doing a Serengeti safari, which was pretty fun. But out of that, so have you guys seen the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy? This was
a long time ago,
circa like 1980s, early 90s or something. Yeah, so we were touring outside the Serengeti. We were just walking around some town. I call it a town. I'll put air quotes there. There was like 5 buildings on the main street and then a whole bunch of houses beyond view with the rolling hills and stuff. So we're walking around the rolling hills and we see this person's house. We're like, okay, neat. It's a hut. And there's out of nowhere, some guy's running up over a hill. And he's just running straight for us. I'm like, I guess this is the neighbor who lives somewhere beyond that hill. He runs up to us out of breath and says, "Hey." And he's speaking to our guide in their local dialect. And the guide turns to us and he hands us this package of baby butt wipes, essentially. And the question was, there's a warning label. We always put warning labels on everything. And the warning label says, don't use on your face. These are baby wipes. We use them on everything, right? It says, don't use on face. It's going to it'll damage your eyes. It says all this scary stuff. And we just ignore those. But he was trying to pay attention to this, trying to translate it from English into his language. So this God's must be crazy moment of, I was supposed to use this on my baby, but it tells me I can't touch it to anything on a person's body. So yeah, we had to translate it for him and say, no, it's okay. But yeah, it was kind of a funny moment there.
That is pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, Flint, looking back, you mentioned like you had 10 years at Boeing working on engineering there. What was kind of a deciding factor to make you exit that? It sounded like a successful career there and get into the real estate capital side.
Yeah, I originally started in 2018. I just wanted to find a new way to invest. I mean, at a certain point, I started trying to hack the stock market. I guess hacking is the wrong word, but be better at it because I was really bad at it. I was just set things and hope it was going to work. And I think that's what a majority of people do. And so I thought I could do better. After I dug in further and further, I realized it's a super complex game. And in the end, you're relying on investor sentiment. So I always use the example, Elon Musk will tweet that he bought Twitter, and all of a sudden Tesla stock tanks. In that 24 hours, Tesla didn't lose a whole bunch of revenue. This is investor sentiment. This is not actual business value. That's when that happened after 2018, but I had come to that conclusion earlier. And so the volatility of the stock market isn't, I don't think it's driven by business sense. So then you always hear about, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read that, but you always hear about somebody whose rich uncle has a lot of real estate and they don't have to work a day job. So I'm like, I'm going to start down this path. And then I bought a duplex. I digested Bigger Pockets podcast forever. So after that duplex, I ended up then finding out about syndications, realizing I could scale myself much faster that way with teams and scalability of apartment buildings. So I quickly jumped into that, and here I am.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely right. Like on the stock market, I think Buffett said, I think quoting Graham, that in the short term it's a voting machine, in the long term it's a weighing machine. So you're on the day-to-day fluctuations, and I'm sure we've all seen like on X or Twitter, you'll see a hedge fund manager, a prominent one, a couple come to mind, that'll tweet something and then kind of it's kind of with a FUD, and market goes down, they take a large position that goes back up, but it's all kind of, like you said, kind of rigged in a certain way to people that can move that kind of money. Where real estate, you have more hands-on control, right? You can pick the markets, you can do the improvements, there's a lot more control you have in that aspect of it, I think.
Yeah, and historically, you look at the charts versus stock market, you can see that commercial real estate, it does move. Everything moves, but it's far less volatile than the stock market.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a chart that compares, I don't know, it's 80, 100 years or something like that talks about overall stock market performance versus real estate performance. And, both have had up and down years, but the stock market's had a lot more down years, on a whole than has had real estate. And your point is exactly right about investor sentiment. It's almost like you can completely analyze everything from a logical standpoint, but then guess what? Emotion comes into play, and everything gets thrown out the window. And
yes.
And in that point, we're constantly told, and it's beat into our heads that you have to invest in stocks. You have to use your 401k to invest in stocks, and there are other things out there, other paths out there. We talk about this quite a bit. It cracks me up that real estate's called an alternative investment because I'm pretty sure real estate was there before stocks. But it's ridiculous. Again, don't get me wrong. Obviously, who was it? Somebody talked about how he liked real estate because I think it's actually Kiyosaki talked about how he liked real estate. It's slow and steady. It's not going to, have your double digits overnight unless you get into a unique circumstance where there's a, captive market or whatever. But again, it is typically going to grow and continue growing over time. And that's, again, one of the reasons we like real estate as well. So Flint, as you were shifting away from aerospace, it sounded like you were doing a little bit of the real estate on the side, and then kind of at one point pulled the trigger and jumped in full time. Were there initially some obstacles that you had to overcome that you can mention?
So many. The biggest obstacle was I'm an engineer, so sometimes a lot of times analysis paralysis kicks in. The other thing, I feel like I need to understand everything before moving forward. So the hardest part was taking action. I mean, I had digested so much information, podcasts, books, whatever I could read before taking action. And in hindsight, I could have spent 10 months before taking action. And I could have done it in 3 versus 6 to 10. So I could be in a much better place right now, or a much different place, I should say, than had I known that in the past. So now I know, especially in the syndication world, and when investors and LPs want to get in, you have to realize that you don't need to know everything. Yeah, you should know enough, and you should have some due diligence, but you're partnering with people who are experts. And those of us who are on the GP side, we're partnering with those who can complement our skills. Because I'm not the best asset manager. I think I know how I could do it, but I'm not going to be the best. I partner with the best. I'm not a good acquisitions person. I've never acquired apartment building myself. I partner with those who deal with the brokers all the time. So even as an LP, do your due diligence. And I would say just start taking action. And action could be just getting on the phone with us and talking to us. We can give you, hey, if you don't understand enough, here's a book to go read. You can digest everything you need to in a short amount of time to understand enough to do due diligence and move forward with investing. Don't wait a year, 2 years until the right time, because there is never a right time. Take action now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something we firmly believe in as well. And again, we believe in education. Absolutely. We believe in knowing what you're talking about, learning the language. I mean, when Bill and I were first getting started, we never had one person question our credibility in terms of a broker or a property manager or anybody. And the reason for that was because we knew we had done our homework, we had prepared. We knew the language, and we carried ourselves very professionally. So, of course we're going to do this deal, but again, to your point, you've got to, prepare, but at the same point in time, you got to do something with that knowledge.
Yep.
So.
Well, looking back as you did the transition, what was one of your first victories that kind of solidified for this was a good path and something I can scale?
Well, I'll start with my first failure that got to my first victory. So once again, sometimes failure equals success, or failure equals learning. I partnered with some guys in, I'm starting to lose it. I think it was 2020, August of 2020. Or maybe it was 21. We tried to purchase a 20-unit apartment building. Lots of things went wrong on that. That's a whole story in and of its own. We ended up backing out. Our earnest money went hard, so I lost a lot of money there, but we ended up backing out. No investors were hurt. One of our bigger challenges in that asset was raising capital. We hadn't done our effort up front to get an investor base that was warm enough to be able to convert. So I immediately turned around from that failure after losing a bunch of money. I spent some money on some mentorship to figure out how to raise capital. That's how I serendipitously full circle became a capital raiser. Mm-hmm. Within 3 months of doing that, I ended up partnering with a very experienced operator who I'd been known for a year, who invited me on board to jump in the GP, and I raised capital for that. So that was my first success.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Again, back to doing your homework and educating yourself about how to proceed down the path. It obviously increases your likelihood of success, et cetera. So, Flint, maybe more recently, is there a funny story that you can share?
A funny story I can share in regards to real estate.
Yeah, real estate. Something that's happened to you recently. Perhaps in the world you're in now.
Gosh, I wouldn't say funny. How about a learning experience?
Absolutely.
So right now, we all know here in 2023, interest rates skyrocketed, and now all operators are going through extreme trials on how well they can operate. So it's interesting, on one of our properties in late 2022, when the interest rates started climbing, we had, it was 100 units. We had, say, 15 units that were vacant because we're doing the renovations. We had probably another 5 that were just in natural turnovers. And in that time, the interest rates were climbing so fast, and our general contractor wasn't able to turn the units fast enough to get those online. Our DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, dropped below 1. And in the fine print on your loans, when your DSCR drops below 1, your bank takes over cash management. So there's a key thing to learn here. As soon as the bank takes over cash management, all cash flow now goes through them. All of your profits, all of your expenses, you have to go ask the bank for money to cover your expenses. It becomes just a nightmare. So anyway, we were under 1 on the DSCR for a hot minute. Then we climbed back up over 1. And then the biggest challenge is we have a cap rate on our interest rate. I think at 6.2. So interest rates have gone way beyond that. So we're at least safe. We're sheltered for the next 2 years. The problem is to get cash management back under our control, the bank requires our DSCR to be 1.25 based on their rate, not the rate we are paying at 6.2. Their rate right now is like 8.5. There's no way we're going to get to a 1.25 DSCR based on an 8.5. So we are stuck with the bank managing. And what's worse is the bank isn't necessarily helping the scenario. So we have $60,000 of cash reserves. We are running net positive on this property, and the valuation of the property is going up. We cannot distribute anything to investors. And the challenge is we now need money to turn units. Some of the units that have come vacant need a heavy renovation just to turn them over, and we're out of money. So now we're stuck in this. The bank's not really trying to help us. So now we're fighting the bank. Hey, if you want us to be successful, you got to give us some of our cash reserves that you're just sitting on.
Yeah.
Or we have to refi or sell. So now we're in this, it's a grind, but at least we are cash positive, and we are with 100 units, we have 5 units that need heavy turnover. So at least we can still be 90+% economic occupancy. So we aren't in a world of hurt, but it's just one of those nitty gritty corners that aren't talked about that much.
Yeah.
And the refi is a hard option too, right? I mean, where the rates are now, what are you going to refi into that's more attractive?
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at a HUD loan, so it would be more attractive, but we're just below the threshold on earnings. They've given us a target on monthly earnings in order to qualify for the HUD loan. So we're just trying to eke up there.
It's typically a longer process too, isn't it? 6 months or so?
Yeah, 6 to 9 months. Yep. But we've already been working that in parallel. So hopefully once we get to that threshold, it'll convert quicker.
Very
good. Wish you luck on that. There's definitely some challenges out there.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, Flint, where are you today on your journey? You talked about some of the struggles you had there, but as far as just the overall business as you're growing that, and what are you looking to do?
Man, I feel like I have more opportunities that come across my plate that I'm willing to jump on, I guess. Like I'll get opportunities and I don't like the location, or I don't know the operator well enough to feel comfortable to jump in and bring my investors with. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and I'm still bullish on opportunity. I have recently, as of this year, converted to build to rent or partnered with build to rent operators. So I am doing new development. There's a really fun project going on where it's a longer term. It's not a single deal, but what we take, it's a 10-year option. It's more of what we call a destination versus a deal investment. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop properties. You invest once into a fund, and we start developing built to rent properties. Every time you sell a property, you create this big earnings. Let's say 2x earnings on this property. You take that 2x earnings, you dump it into new properties, and you start developing those properties and those 2x. So you're starting this 2x times 2x times 2x, and then all of a sudden you get this really exponential growth. And after 10 years, you get this massive earnings versus what you would normally get in a, say, value add over 5 years. We can build properties in 2 years. So development offers, I think, a quicker wealth growth strategy, but you're not counting on cash flow. So there's some risk there. Development has a different risk profile. Mm-hmm. But I think there is a huge amount of demand. We need supply out there. So we're going to start building, and our investors are going to recognize hopefully quite a large multiple beyond what you would see in a standard value add.
Great. Yeah. Any particular regions you guys are focused on? The Southeast,
that one's in
Southwest, or?
That one is in Phoenix. We're focusing 100% on Phoenix, one, because all of our resources are there, but over a 10-year deal, we are willing to pivot and move to another market as needed.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting approach and model, and definitely hope that really turns out well. And you're right, there is such a housing demand that we are still millions of units short of full housing. We're seeing rents soften, so that seems to be a little bit of an opposing view. If we're short on units, why would rents be softening? But it's all locality and situational. Yeah. And I definitely think that there's also a fear factor that's across the general population right now because of interest rates. Interest rates and inflation. It's the double whammy is eating up people's ability to pay their rent. So therefore they start backing down and sometimes don't pay rent, and obviously that causes evictions and just sort of softening the market. We've seen that across some of the things that we look at. But again, to your point, we still are full 3 to 5 million units short of full housing. So.
Yep. Yeah. And yes, the current economic times create the softening, but I think these economic times are forcing people to be okay with cohabitation, which is also allowing lesser units needed. But over the long haul, if we're going to reduce the overall rents, because rents have skyrocketed a whole lot too, in order to reduce some of those rent costs, we do need more supply. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, but there is a massive demand, and the big institutional firms want to buy up these built to rent properties. That's our target. Is they don't build, so we build for them, right, and then sell.
Yeah, nice. So Flint, is there something that you do either personally or through your business that you can share that you do to give back to help others in some way?
At the moment, so I'm targeting. I really want to get in with Engineers Without Borders. A lot of people have heard Doctors Without Borders, but the Engineers Without Borders, I really need to get involved in one of those chapters because I've been thinking about it for a while, and it would be fun just use my engineering skills to do things for third world countries. And that could be, build some low cost wind energy systems or water filtration systems for these communities. They do a lot of different things. I'm sad to say I haven't jumped into that yet because I've been thinking about it for a while, and maybe this is my trigger to go sign up for one of those groups.
Nice. Yeah, definitely a worthy cause to help others in some way. So very nice.
What's something you've recently implemented in your business that's allowed you to grow and scale?
I'm always taking on new systems. Well, I shouldn't say too many systems, but I've hired VAs. I think that's probably one of the most powerful things. The more powerful thing is always to hire a coach. I think those in of themselves are worth so much because you're essentially investing in yourself. And then you turn around and trying to invest in the philosophy of who, not how. So if I don't know how to be the expert, I shouldn't be figuring out how. I should just hire the who because I can run faster. So some of that stuff, and that's where the VAs come in. And then on top of that, having systems in place is always healthy.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, good. So Flint, what advice would you share with somebody who's considering making a path change?
Into the GP world?
Wherever,
Or-
it could. I mean, again, we've actually had people on the podcast before that have gone from the IT world into owning a restaurant, and from being a
interesting.
lawyer into being an IT sales guy. So it's just
Okay.
any path change. Yeah.
Yeah. And all right, we'll talk more broadly about investments.
Mhm.
For 20 years, as I mentioned, I was in stocks and not doing well at it. And I think I speak for a majority of the population that that's where we go. The big financial institutions have billions of dollars to guide societal norms.
Mhm.
So get yourself out of a societal norm. And this could be not just real estate. Just think outside of the box. As soon as I stepped outside of this box, you're in real estate. You're like, oh, apartment buildings, I get it. Then all of a sudden, self-storage. You're like, oh, interesting. Car washes, ATM machines, oil and gas. People are investing in oil and gas. It's just like it starts like expanding your mind. And then I'm finding out that fine art is an incredible tax benefit. So not only do the wealthy they go buy fine art, not because they need something to hang on their wall, but because it makes tax benefit sense. I don't understand the details there, but you got to step outside the box. And one of the things that I did stepping outside the box was real estate. But then I started realizing once I quit my W-2 that I was picking up a side gig of buying businesses, cash flowing businesses. So there's so many different return profiles out there rather than just sit and wait for compound interest in your 401k to hope that you can retire and your nest egg is big enough to last you until the end of time. Why don't you go buy something that cash flows? Real estate can kind of cash flow. We know that, but cash flows are really limited right now with high interest rates. Real estate is more of a wealth growing machine and a tax benefit. But on the side, you should also couple that with maybe buying a business. And you can be there's a term for it, I'm going to call it a passive owner. I bought an e-commerce business. I'm largely passive. Yes, I have to make some decisions, but I'm not doing all the day-to-day operation. And once everything's running smoothly, I might put in 2 hours a month on it. And it's going to cash flow really well. Nice. So it all depends on how you find the people that could help you in various scenarios. Just get outside of the box because there's so much stuff out there to do.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly a valid point that I think it was Jim Rohn that said, basically you're kind of the amalgamation of your like 5 closest friends. And I think it's the same thing as you're talking, as you have a different friend set, it kind of opens you up to new opportunities that were always there, like say oil and gas or whatever. You didn't realize, well, that's an investment. And it just kind of expands it and just what you're getting used to looking at and viewing it a new way. And it's just the opportunities that they thought was the RAS, reticular activating system that, you don't realize your mind filters out things that aren't important to you. So, I mean, when you buy a red pickup truck, all of a sudden you see all the red pickup trucks on the road. They're always there. They just weren't important to you, so you never saw them. I think the same thing with opportunities. You start getting around a lot more opportunities and people that are doing interesting things in different spaces that you weren't normally accustomed to. And it opens your mind up to that and you see more of that.
And realize that there's so many ways to access capital that you have that you don't think you have. Like I'm sure you guys say, you allow self-directed IRAs and solo 401ks. I mean, I invest with all those. And on the flip side, if you're sitting on a lot of equity in your house and you're not moving anywhere, you're sitting on debt equity. What's the point of equity if it's not of use to you? So start leveraging that. You can take a HELOC. Maybe now with high interest rates, it's not worth it. But in the past, I've totally leveraged my HELOC to grow my wealth more. So you have money somewhere, take it, leverage it to make more money. And definitely focus. I just recently heard a high net worth is worthless if you don't have any cash flow. And it's funny because that had never clicked in my mind before. But it's true. At some point, your high net worth can generate a ton of cash flow. But if you don't put it in cash flow creating things, you just have a lot of money that you can't touch. So there's a healthy balance there. And I think that's where I am now leveraging cash flowing businesses with real estate because my businesses can cash flow and then I can grow my wealth in the real estate side.
Okay. Nice. I was just going to mention, you talked about just different streams of where to put your money in, and you mentioned a whole bunch of them, and I do think they're, absolutely real estate is one aspect, but there are other things in that sort of alternative investing space that are worthy to consider, but again, educate yourself, before you jump in the deep end on that. But, it kind of did make me think about, there's a book by James Rickards that talks about long-term wealth generation and longevity over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And he was at a dinner of ultra wealthy people in Italy, and he actually was sitting next to some woman from a family that has been literally in the wealthiest set of the Italian community, in Italy, for like 700 years. And he said, "What's your secret?" He said, and she said, "One third, one third, one third. 1/3 real estate, 1/3 gold, 1/3 art." And
Whoa.
Yeah, it was fascinating. So her point was that, look, when the invasions happen, when your country gets taken over by bad people, you roll the art up, you take them out of the frames, roll them up, take them with you. You take the title of the property with you. You figure out how to get the gold out. But it just was an interesting point about fine art. Yeah, there's definitely some investment returns you can generate on fine art. I haven't dug into it all that much, but it is interesting.
Yeah.
So.
There's even groups out there where you don't have to go find a piece of art and hang it on your wall, because that to me would be stupid for me to do. But you can actually invest in people who buy art and then store it so it's secure. It's kind of like buying real estate. You don't through us, through a syndication, they're syndicating artwork.
I've heard of recently a syndication art company, and I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head now. But again, you're right. It is effectively, it's a syndication. So
by fractional shares in an art piece. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll take a finger.
That's right. Well, Flint, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out and learn more about what you have going on, the opportunities that you're working on?
Yeah, I think the easiest is, so I'm the founder of Vestus Capital. You can go to vestuscapital.com. If you don't remember that, just go to investwithflint.com and it'll take you right there.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we'll put links to the show notes below to that address. And again, Flint, we want to thank you for being on the Road Less Traveled show today. Really enjoyed the conversation and wish you continued success.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, Flint, thank you for being on today. We really want to thank you, as well as we want to thank our listeners. Please continue to give us a 5-star rating so we can bring you more great content like our show today with Flint Jamison. And a couple of reminders that Park Capital Partners has going on. First, everybody, we have the Park Capital Partners Value Add Fund, which is a 506c fund open today to accredited investors. Next, we have the Park Capital Partners Foundation, which is a 501(c) nonprofit. That is another way that Bill and I give back. And the way that works very quickly is, first of all, Bill and I fund the operations of the foundation. So all the money donated goes to do its best work, which is to help others. Second, we donate personally. Third, we donate corporately. And finally, when investors invest with us in one of our projects, we make a donation to honor that investor to a pre-selected list of 15 different charities. So please reach out. Bill and I happen to have a conversation anytime. ParkCapitalPartnersLLC.com, ParkCapitalPartnersLLC.com. And again, thanks, Flint, for being on today. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen, take action. Thanks for joining.